Generally speaking, when sources come to us and like, what do I do here? And how do I be helpful? I think it's really in the HARO acronym. It's be helpful, be authentic, be relevant, and be on time. Being helpful is basically just saying, hey, if I were in the shoes of this journalist, is this a helpful pitch? Be authentic is just don't use 100% AI and add your own human expertise to things. Be relevant, make sure that you have the credentials, and be on time is journalists are on deadline and they need to get connected with the source quickly. So the faster that you can respond to that journalist and be helpful, the better success that you'll have.
Welcome to On Top of PR with Jason Mudd.
Hello and welcome to On Top of PR. I'm your host, Jason Mudd with Axia Public Relations. And today we're talking about Help a Reporter Out, HARO, however you pronounce it. HARO, it's back. And we're excited to welcome our guest, Brett Farmiloe. He is the CEO of Help a Reporter Out, a platform that connects journalists with sources to create expert-powered content. An entrepreneur and author, Brett has scaled startups, worked with global brands, and helped thousands of professionals share their expertise. His mission, make knowledge more accessible and more human online. Brett, I'd like to welcome you to On Top of PR.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. I'm glad to be here. It's been a minute since we recorded a new episode. And Brett, you and I have talked about getting together to do this for a while. I know my audience is interested about our topic today, the comeback of HARO, modern sourcing for journalists and brands. As we were talking before we pressed record, I grew up in the BMX era and I had a HARO bike, which was spelt the same way as HARO. And some of my friends called it HARO, some of it called it HARO. I've always called this service HARO and other people called it HARO. So I guess we'll just use the term interchangeably, but because of the way the founder, Peter Shankman, pronounces it, that's where you've decided to land. Is that right?
That's right, HARO, and I might have to pick up a BMX bike. We'll see.
Well, they're still around. I looked at getting one for nostalgical purposes, but the bank account and the fitness level probably aren't a good idea. Plus my size, I'm way bigger than I was back then. So Brett, tell me, why did you buy and revive this platform that was at one point extremely popular?
Yeah, I think that there was just a great opportunity to bring it back. So the backstory is that it was founded in 2008. It was ran until about April 24 when it was rebranded to Connectively. Mm-hmm. And then in December 24, it was announced that it was going to be discontinued. And so I reached out with a cold email to the general support line and said, hey, I'm interested. And we ended up putting a deal across the finish line and reviving it in April of 2025.
Well, that's pretty cool. I wish I would have thought about that, but good for you. And what was kind of your passion in wanting to bring it back?
Yeah, I think that, it's such a good nostalgic brand for so many people. So many people who got their first media mention or journalists remember HARO in a place where they were, up against deadline and needed a source right away. And so I think that's been one of the biggest surprises in bringing it back is just how prominent of a brand it really was. And we're out to make it another, brand that does serve a use and being helpful for many.
Got it. So what's changed? What have you done since you've purchased it to kind of resurrect it? And I'm assuming you identified what was good and what needed to be improved and working on taking it to that next level, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think that step one, bring it back. It was great to, connect people, connect journalists with sources for stories via email. And we wanted to bring that back as step one. And, the reason why it was discontinued, or many reasons why, I think that, a lot of AI use, spam started to plague the platform. And so bringing it back in its original form is easier said than done. So we've had to institute a lot of different AI checks, spam detection methods to make sure that those connections between journalists and sources is going to be authentic. So that's step one for us. And we're looking forward to moving on to step 2 and 3.
Got it. So what's next in those steps?
Yeah. So I think that we look at a couple different pillars, and it all goes back to this premise of be helpful to reporters and journalists. And what did journalists and reporters need today besides just sources for stories. I think that, the biggest thing that we're realizing, as we talk with more and more journalists is just how crazy it is to be a journalist today. I mean, I think that when I interview and speak with different journalists, I ask them about how it's going. And, the thing that I've taken away is that journalists are now having multiple different streams of income. And so be helpful for us is around how do we support and amplify those existing streams of income. And so we're going to be coming out here pretty soon with HARO journalist profiles. So basically tapping into the authority for the domain and being able to use that domain authority to help support and connect journalists with different writing opportunities, to connect them with different subscribers for their Substacks, to really drive passive income so that they're able to focus on what they do best.
Let's talk about that passive income for a minute that you mentioned, or outside income. I don't want anybody listening to our podcast to come to the wrong conclusion or assumption. So, it's not unusual that I hear from an entrepreneur who doesn't understand how PR works, and they think, well, certainly I could just pay a journalist to write about me or something like that. So let's be clear about what you're seeing these other journalists do for additional income or side income.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the opportunity to clarify that. So when we're looking at the different income streams, it's writing opportunities. So typically when we're speaking with journalists, they've got 5 different clients that they're writing for. So we want to be able to signal to different people that journalist is open to write. So connecting with them writing opportunities is one. The other thing that we see emerging really, really prominently is Substack right now. So we want to be able to connect journalists with more Substack subscribers and amplify the visibility for that work. And then we'll see other stuff like consultations, where it's not basically you're booking 30 minutes to learn about how to pitch better in PR and stuff like that. So you'll be able to schedule consultation hours. If a journalist has affiliate relationships where they're recommending tools pretty frequently, they'll be able to list that on their profile. And anytime someone makes a purchase from that recommendation, journalists will be able to keep 100% of that affiliate revenue. So things like that just are extensions of what a journalist is already doing.
So when you flag them or tag them as open to write on the platform, that means they're open to write not for other media outlets, but also for the corporations and the PR companies maybe that are participating in the HARO platform.
Yeah, absolutely. So if a journalist is like writing about cybersecurity and you're a cybersecurity company, that's a great writer to potentially bring on board and produce some content.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. And do you have any data that tells you, how many journalists are in this category, either whether it's on your platform or just otherwise? Like, how prominent and common is this practice?
Well, there's been 75,000 plus journalists who have used HARO. So the quantity of profiles that we're going to launch with is going to be fairly large. Mm-hmm. And then in terms of the folks who are open to write and being able to connect with different companies to write blog posts, I think that's going to be determined. It's going to be all being able to have it be fully customized and claimable. So we're not just going to turn on features. Like journalists actually have to claim their profile, and then they could drag and drop and design that profile however they'd like.
Okay. And to clarify, are these profiles active now, or is that in the roadmap?
This is on the roadmap. This is something that we're going to be launching with before 2025 ends.
Okay. Perfect. Great. And then tell me about my notes here say about reducing pitch friction and improve match quality. Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. So I think the thing with HARO is it's a 3 times a day email newsletter where journalists put in a request. That request goes in with a group of other requests and is sent via email. And then sources can get in touch directly with the journalist to make their pitch. And so how do you know what to include in your pitch? And so we've got data that essentially signals what a journalist responds to, and then making those pitch guidelines visible for corporate communications teams, PR professionals, do-it-yourself small business owners, so that pitch is going to be met with a favorable response from that journalist.
Got it. You're reminding me, years ago, I was talking to a mortgage company, and their chief marketing officer or VP, I forgot the exact title, maybe marketing director, was telling me that he scrolls through the, HARO summaries while he's shaving and brushing his teeth each morning. And I said, man, you need a PR firm, because that's not the way to live life. And so the way we do it here is we have one person on our team who's in charge of looking at those emails or those notifications the second they come out, and then distributing to the experts internally who are managing those accounts or whatever, just for the highest and best use of our account team, right, and our agency. So, it didn't make any sense for a marketing person who really doesn't know anything about PR, which is fine, to be the one reviewing those and looking for the opportunities and then trying to do their own pitching to them, especially if the only time they can squeeze them in is, while they're shaving and brushing their teeth and getting ready for the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, it's definitely evolved quite a bit in terms of getting that 3 times a day email and then being able to set alerts to it. And then now we're seeing a lot of home baked and hardwired solutions to monitor those emails a little bit more effectively.
Yeah, there's somebody that I was going to have as a guest on this show who had done some AI automation for HARO, but then it disappeared, and so I just kind of canceled the segment because I didn't think it naturally made sense. But I'm not sure what he's doing now. But yeah, there are definitely. It's interesting. I didn't realize that there were companies who had attach themselves or latch themselves to the HARO product to be able to offer additional services beyond the media pitching, right? So I've seen search optimization firms offer that as a service to help them get quoted in backlinks. And then I've seen people make it so there's filters and tools and AI suggested responses and things like that. How do you feel about that? Is that something you're comfortable with, or you feel like that kind of violates what you want people doing?
Our goal at the end of the day is to connect journalists with great sources for stories.
Sure.
And however that gets done, great. And so it's a challenge for us when we see that hey, this is a weakness maybe that exists on the platform. If there's a need for another service to emerge, then that's a signal for us to see if that's something that we want to address.
Yeah, I like that. So feel free to, kind of latch on or hitch on a plugin, an add-on or whatever, but that doesn't guarantee that you're not going to, eliminate them and by doing it yourself or integrate it into your own platform. And over the years, we've seen Google and other, kind of technology come in and be like, hey, that's a good idea. We're going to do that too. There's nothing that you're violating, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, it's stuff like we'll see one of the coolest things I think that exists is being able to use like a knowledge base. So content that someone's created or looking at experiences that that source has had, and then being able to use that as an enhanced alert system so that when there's an opportunity that goes in, you're alerted to that opportunity that's beyond just a term like cybersecurity. Maybe you've got some certain experience that really connects you to a particular opportunity. I think that's really the smart matching mechanism that we're seeing today.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And, I know there's other platforms out there, and ones that I appreciate are the ones that you can go into and see your past responses in case there was something you or your client said really smart for another topic or whatever. And, it's been many years since I've used, HARO itself, but when I did, it was always helpful to kind of be like, wait, I basically have pitched this same kind of concept before. Let me see if I can find it, go back, tweak it, of course, improve it, make it even better for what this journalist is asking. But 80% of that's already been put together. And I certainly don't want my team to go back to our clients and start over when we've got, a bulk of that content already ready to go.
Yeah, I think that we're in this human in the loop PR era. Yeah. And when you look at what that means, it's really being able to say, hey, how do we use AI to essentially get something to third base? And how do you as a PR professional be able to take it across the finish line and make it really usable for a journalist? So I think that, what we're seeing with reporters and journalists is two camps. One is, I don't want anything to do with AI. And then others who are like, hey, I don't care if this is written by AI because I just need to get connected with a source. Yeah. And if they could get connected with the right source, then they're going to do their job and follow up and be able to get that information for their story. So it's been a pretty interesting stance that we've been taking as a platform to just try to be neutral and equip people with the tools that allow you to use AI to get the right opportunities, and then for journalists to be able to be transparent about whether or not something was or was not written by AI.
Yeah, and I think the query itself from the journalist could simply say very clearly, I do not reply with AI-generated responses, or I will not consider them, or I'm forbidden from considering them, or whatever. But I mean, at the end of the day, if this was 1970 or 80, and somebody said, oh, I prefer to write my stories by hand instead of using, a word processor or whatever it might be, people would just laugh at them, and that's kind of how I feel about AI. There's a role for it, and, but resisting or saying I'm not going to use it because I don't think it's ethical, wise, useful, whatever you want to say, is kind of like, are you still, it's like, what'd you do when the fax machine came out? Still put stuff in the mail when it needed to be faxed, or, did you use FedEx for something that just a one-page fax or something? So I'm dating myself here with these analogies, but I can just, I equate it to, people say, man, PR has really changed in the last 10, 20, 30 years. I'm like, it really hasn't changed. We just have more tools, more vulnerabilities, higher expectations, but the practice of PR itself, in my opinion, is identical, right? You got to have good strategy, good communication skills. You might have a lot more tools at your fingertips, but misuse of those tools can just amplify, your lack of, good communication and sophistication. So you do have to be very careful and be on alert all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the role that AI has is really monitoring. It's being able to monitor so much different information and do that effectively. So that's just making the job of a PR professional that much easier.
This episode is brought to you by Audible. Enjoy 30 days free of Audible Premium Plus by going to ontopofpr.com/audible.
You're listening to On Top of PR with your host, Jason Mudd. Jason is a trusted advisor to some of America's most admired and fastest growing brands. He is the managing partner at Axia Public Relations, a PR agency that guides news, social, and web strategies for national companies. And now, back to the show.
Yeah, so I want to rewind to a couple of things. So first of all, I asked you earlier about HARO, and you mentioned your primary focus is making the job of journalist easier, and I love that's where you landed, because at the end of the day, it's legacy wise has been a great platform, right? Connecting experts directly to journalists and journalists directly to the experts they need when they need it. Kind of on demand. And Peter certainly, gets all the credit for coming up with that, certainly gets the credit for innovating it and using his network to build it very quickly. And so to that end, I guess my first question is, you led with journalists. Is that intentional? And regardless, what percentage of your focus is towards journalists versus sources? And how do you manage that user experience for both parties?
Yeah, I think it's in the name. It's help a reporter out.
Right.
We gotta, and then if you look at the business model of HARO, it's 100% newsletter ad supported. And so that gives us a license to be pretty strict when it comes to sources who may or may not be misusing the system. And then that equates to better quality for the journalist. So we've got to be able to take a stand and pick a side to be supportive of. And with Help a Reporter Out, it's very much majority on journalists and reporters. That said, you still have to be cognizant of sources because obviously that's the connection that needs to happen. So, but if we were to pick a side, and I think that's the difference of any other tool that's in the space, is it's for reporters, and the business model is not dependent on subscriptions from PR professionals.
For sure. At the end of the day, right, the cart before the horse, right? You got to please, if you don't have journalists, then sources don't come. If you don't have sources, journalists don't come. You got to make both audiences happy. I think the more sophisticated audience, broadly speaking, is going to be journalists, right? They have certain expectations and criteria, and they're probably a little more easier to offend and lose, right? And meanwhile, what I've loved about HARO over the years, it's the great equalizer, right? It has put journalists directly in touch with experts. So whether those experts want to or can afford PR representation, they now have kind of a low barrier to entry, almost grassroots organic, I'm not sure the right word to describe it, connectivity to journalists to see exactly what they're looking for. And even what I like is take a few at-bats themselves so they can see that this isn't just easy and instant, and that they will get ghosted. Their pitch might get ignored and things like that. And if they don't hit that deadline, I don't know about your current platform, but in the past, I know if you don't hit that deadline, you're not responding to them at all, unless you ask them for more time and got their direct contact information and things like that.
Yeah, I think that you're hitting on some good points there in terms of there's benefit because everyone is an expert in something, and HARO very much democratizes that access to earn media. Yep. And at the same time, it's not an easy game. So you can go out and experience it and know how time intensive it may be, how low of a hit rate you might experience. And so I think it's a win-win for everyone who's involved.
Totally agree with you, no doubt. Okay, so this just naturally leads me to the next thing where, we're thinking about, better pitches, fewer blasts. The example I like to use is in PR, like Major League Baseball. If your batting average is over 300, you're a Hall of Famer. If you're in PR and your batting average is over 300, you're probably a Hall of Famer. Now, it hasn't stopped somebody, from a cynic or somebody who thinks they're cute, and tell me, well, that just means then you need to send out more pitches. And I'm like, no, do you see a Hall of Fame, batter swinging at more pitches to get a higher batting average and get on base more often? You don't, right? And so I know we want to talk about this, so I'm just teeing it up right now. Better pitches, fewer blasts. Talk to me about how that works.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, and great to know that you're a baseball fan. So I think that, generally speaking, when sources come to us and like, what do I do here, and how do I be helpful? I think it's really in the HARO acronym. It's be helpful, be authentic, be relevant, and be on time. Being helpful is basically just saying, hey, if I were in the shoes of this journalist, is this a helpful pitch? Be authentic is just don't use 100% AI and add your own human expertise to things. Be relevant, make sure that you have the credentials, and be on time is journalists are on deadline and they need to get connected with the source quickly. So the faster that you can respond to that journalist and be helpful, the better success that you'll have.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I don't know about your platform, but in the past, when it was ran by Peter, I always found that sending a follow-up email within that deadline was also very helpful too. So you might have been first, and I believe it's important to be first or early, and then the deadline might sit for a little bit longer. I've always found it's good to just say, hey, just want to make sure you got my pitch, make myself available if you have any questions, and here's the best way to reach me if you do. And that way, in the event the deadline closes and you can't reply back to them anymore, it's just kind of a one more kind of effort out there that I always found to be very helpful.
It's a good hack. It's a good tip. The inbox is a busy place.
Yep, for sure. All right, so I want to go back to him for just a minute. So you said you've got 700 or 75,000 users. Is that journalists? Is that sources? Is that a combination?
That's the number of journalists who have used HARO.
Mm-hmm. That are currently enrolled or that have used it historically?
Historically.
Okay, yeah. So it's a pretty big ecosystem and very well-known brand. And again, credit to Peter for building that. Speaking of Peter, how does it feel to be kind of, he started his own version once they closed down HARO. You acquired the assets to it and the brand and have can continued to build it. But do you have a relationship with Peter? Have you talked to him? I mean, this is his baby. Now you own it and he's out there kind of doing something similar.
Yeah, I mean, when we acquired it, I thought it was only right to bring it to his attention and to present him with an opportunity. And it didn't work out, so we revived it and we've turned the page and moved on.
Cool. Yeah, he's been a guest on the show. He's been a friend of our agency for many years, and I love what he's done. And credit to him for coming up with this concept. And now there's a handful of different platforms that you can do this on. And I'm just a big believer that competition is good for everybody, and raises the bar. So speaking of kind of, there is a little bit of competition for this when originally there was none. And when there's something good that somebody innovates and disrupts the marketplace with, others come to the market as well. So, where do you see yourself really standing out from everything, from the other options that are out there? And what are you planning on doing maybe that they're not doing yet? Or because I'm seeing a lot of them diversify into different areas.
Yeah, I think that the reason why HARO works is because it's such a large, helpful network. So if you have sources and you have sources who are willing to connect journalists with other sources, it works. And so HARO doesn't have any friction. It's email based. You don't have to sign up in order to submit to a journalist, and that's why it's working today. So I think that at the end of the day, it's where journalists are going to have success in finding sources, and HARO seems to be, in 6 months since its revival, picking right up where it left off. It's funny because, it's been back for 6 months and people still think it's dead. And then the people who never knew it was dead have always just assumed it's been around. So it's been eventful, and it's pretty easy to get started and get resubscribed.
So tell me, it is easy to get resubscribed. So how does somebody do that?
Go to helperreporter.com, enter your email address, and you'll get 3 emails a day with a summary of requests from journalists.
Okay, good. Yeah. And if this is the first time someone's ever heard of HARO before, what kind of advice would you give them beyond what I thought was really cool earlier? Helpful, authentic, relevant, and on time.
I think that's it. I would also maybe, to be consistent, figure out a good monitoring system. And, for that, I would recommend featured.com because Featured owns and operates HARO. So you could use Featured to set an alert and get early access to HARO queries as well. So that's a good hack and good way to stay consistent.
Okay, I like that a lot. In the deal, did you have access to all past users that you could send an email to and let them know that it's back? And I assume you did that if you did.
We did.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. One time or multiple times? I feel like that's something you need to make sure people know.
Multiple times.
Yeah, cool. Okay, good. I think I remember getting it multiple times because I sent it to the person on our team that's in charge of that. I'd be like, are we connected here? Because this is important, And she assured me she is. So she's on top of it, and I love that. I think for us, that's the best practice. Instead of having 3, 4, 5, 8 people look at it every day or every email, we've got kind of a coverage system in place. I don't know if that's helpful to our audience, which is why I'm sharing it. But years ago, we used to split it up, in shifts. So, Becca would do the morning shift and Katie would do the afternoon and somebody else would do the evening blast kind of thing. Then we started splitting up by the day. And now we just have one person, like that's a big part of her role. And for some reason, if she's, out for PTO or vacation, we have a sub jump in to monitor it kind of thing. So that's our model. I don't know. Have you heard anything creative, Brett?
I mean, you're on it. That's great. I think that, it just goes back again to monitoring and if that's a human-based system, if it's a human and AI system, just don't make it 100% AI.
Right. Yeah. And I, back in the day, we used to use message rules that would look for certain terms and things like that. I don't know what we do today, to be honest. I'm grateful to not have to be the one in the trenches doing that. But the last thing I know we wanted to hit on today was talking about measurement shift from vanity placements to expert authority. And I know you've got some thoughts on that. We love to talk about measurement. We love to talk about avoiding vanity and focus on, what moves the needle for the company and ultimately, thought leadership and expertise sharing. So tell me more about what you have in mind there.
Yeah, I think that model mentions is the new metric. The thing that we hear from people pretty frequently is that they want to be featured in LLMs. How do you raise your AI visibility? And so I think that there's a lot of platforms that have emerged and have done a great job of measuring that AI visibility. So scalepost.ai is probably my favorite. Profound seems to be the leader in the space. There's another one that I'm impressed with their team called chatrank.ai. There's a lot of different tools that measure AI visibility. And then Muckrack also came out with their own tool as well. And so I think model mentions is a very interesting metric to start to measure and try to take action on. And I think that media mentions helps with model mentions. And so platforms like HARO are a great way to help boost up those media mentions so that your model mentions can start to go up as well.
Yeah, I love that. And yes, everybody is asking about LLMs and how do we optimize. And, we're calling it AI relations, just like there's investor relations, community relations, public relations, media relations. I know other people are calling it generative engine optimization, answer engine optimization, and other things. But at the end of the day, this is the new in our industry. grateful that 96% of AI citations come from PR content, which, Muckrack had a big report on that. And I think that's great for our profession, of course, and creating synergies. But there's more to do to that than just organic earned media coverage, which I think is important for people to understand. You got to have structured data. You've got to make sure that you're doing things kind of holistically in 360 degrees to make this really work well. So as for the convenience of our audience, as always, we will put together an episode notes. And in the episode notes, we'll put links to these different resources that you've shared and recommended, as well as a link to get connected with you on LinkedIn and to get registered with Help a Reporter Out. Brett, speaking of LinkedIn, is that the best way for people to connect with you?
Yep. Or just via email, brett@featured.com.
Perfect. Excellent. Any closing thoughts you want to share with our audience?
I would say thanks for having me on the show. I would also say that it's an incredible opportunity that we have to make HARO helpful. And so if anyone has any recommendations or ways that we can improve, we're all ears.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. We're glad to have you here too. And honestly, I think being helpful as a business strategy is incredibly undervalued. But I like to buy from people who have been helpful to me. And, I always tell people that, if you can help somebody else when they need it, they'll remember it and try to refer you, because people like to do business with people they know, like, and trust. I think we forget about that sometimes. And perhaps especially in business. But, what comes around goes around. And I really think that, just being helpful and friendly and nice to people goes a long way.
It's not just a message for the holidays. It's 12 months a year.
That's right. And for the record, we are recording this on November 10th, 2025, and things can change at a blink of an eye. So we'll just make sure that we've documented that here. Brett, if there's anything else that I can do to be helpful to you, let me know. But we appreciate you coming on this episode, sharing your smarts and insights, helping Help a Reporter Out become even more helpful to that community. And, one of the examples I recently shared at a conference I was speaking is, somebody asked me, what's one of the smartest things you've seen a client do over the years? And there's several, but one that stood out for me, and I think you'll appreciate this, is why I'm bringing it up. This particular client was always willing to help a reporter no matter what they were writing about. So her background was finance. She got moved around, from a CPA to a chief marketing officer. But her rule of thumb was, anytime a reporter needed help understanding something financial and I could help them, I would do it, even if they didn't cover my sector, cover my company, or whatever the case might be. And I can tell you, to this day, it's still paying dividends for her. Because she invested in those relationships, not looking for anything in return. When she's got a pitch, it's so much easier to connect her with journalists because they like her, trust her, and want to do business with her.
I think it's a great strategy, especially today, journalists need a lot of help, and there's a lot of ways to be helpful. So I'd be interested in investing in the long term if I was in PR.
Yeah, 100%. All right, Brett, thank you for another great episode. And with that, this has been another episode of On Top of PR. As always, we look forward to helping you stay on top of PR. If you found this episode valuable, please take a minute and share it with a friend or colleague who you think would benefit from it. Always the best way to do that is ontopofpr.com. We have all of our episodes listed there, both video and audio versions, as well as episode notes where you can see and link to the content and websites and other tools that we mentioned here. So with that, I want to say thanks to Brett and HARO for coming back and for being here to help journalists make their jobs a lot easier. Journalism is a great profession and one that really needs as much help as we can give it. And whatever time we can save them by connecting them with the best experts would be great. If you found this episode valuable, again, please share it with a friend or colleague. And if you'd like, please leave us a review. We'd really appreciate that too. With that, Jason Mudd from Axia Public Relations signing off. I hope something great happens to you today.
This has been On Top of PR with Jason Mudd, presented by ReviewMaxer. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and check out past shows at ontopofpr.com.